Well, we got a great Saturday coming here. We got senior day for our seniors, which is always a very emotional day when you have your senior class that's leaving and you got so much invested with these guys and been through so much with them and such great kids that this day is always an emotional day. Obviously playing a rival game against Syracuse, which is a lot of fun, a lot of intensity, and being home here and the whole Thanksgiving week and football just seems to be at its very best in this week. So looking forward to a great week. I know our kids are very, very excited and anxious for this game, and as I'm sure they are. This is a very good football team. They have some very good players. You know, offensively, they're top 10 in scoring. Defensively, they're top 10 in sacks and interceptions. I think they're playing with a lot of confidence, and so it should be two good teams clashing against each other here, you know, and kind of the way it should be. Boston College, Syracuse, both teams are talented and both have a lot on the line, and you know, and even when there's not a lot on the line, there certainly is unbelievably competitive games that myself, Reggie Terry, a lot of guys have been involved with, and so certainly, you know, as a staff and as a program and as a team, you know, it's a fun week, it's a big time week, so really anxious to get on with that week and get going with our players. So happy to answer any of your questions.
Coach, when you play a team like Syracuse, do you run into them at all in the Northeast on the recruiting trail looking for the same common guys, or is it you guys run in different circles?
I mean, seems like lately, not so much. You know, we're heavy into New Jersey, we're heavy into Connecticut, Mass, and PA and Maryland, and I think they might dip into that Maryland area a little bit, and I'm not saying they're not in these other areas, but we're just not. It doesn't seem like I can remember when I had this area, and I was at Syracuse. I mean, it was a battle for the same guys, you know. But I think if you look at their roster, they probably have guys from different parts of the country, type of thing. Maybe a couple more junior college guys, stuff like that. You know, every once in a while, but. Probably not what I remember the level that it used to be. You know, I think we're pretty entrenched and embedded in North Jersey and certainly in Mass and Connecticut, and like I said, the place I mentioned, and of course, you know, we also have that niche of the national level Catholic school deal. So not as much as you might think. No.
On the field, playing a team like Syracuse, I know you guys use tempo, but to play Syracuse with how fast they like to go, how does that kind of how do you prepare for that from a defensive standpoint and from a tempo standpoint? Well,
I mean, you know, we practice against it every day. You know, there are times they go faster than us, there are times they don't. I think the vertical throw game is the component that, you know, is added in there. They've got a big, with different, you know, different styles are big bubble, vertical game. Off the run game is kind of the run game. You know, it's a tight zone. Gap scheme, run game, much like, you know, we have some different formations, but we've seen a lot of this through the year. But it's the sideline to sideline bubble game coupled with the vertical game, and you know, I mean, the quarterback's an elite player. I mean, I would say Eric is probably maybe the best quarterback in the conference, and I've said that. I mean, I'm not saying something new. You know, you could argue, but I'm saying that guy is got great throwing capability, great running capability, but he's got the intangibles. He's tough, he's competitive, he's relentless, and he just keeps the chains moving for them. And I think he's a unique, exceptional player. And they have, you know, Tommy DeVito, the backup, is very good as well. But I mean, Eric's unique. I've seen him too long, too much, and that guy has got it. So I think it makes their whole deal go, as it would for any offense or any team. And you know, a lot said about scheme, this and that. I got a lot to say about him. I think he's a difference maker, an equalizer. That's my opinion, you know. And I think they got another good one right behind him that is a New Jersey guy, you know. And, you know, I think he's a real good player. That clearly is a big piece of who they are, you know. And I think Dino's done a great job of trying to add a few more pieces to their offense, clearly trying to establish more of a run game. And I'll tell you, I think this Syracuse, I think they're a more physical team, and I think, you know, I think they've done a good job on defense. I think they've got good players, and they've really improved. And I don't know this, and maybe that's got to do with the fact that they have a little bit more of a power run game attachment to them, so they can work more against each other and get that component. I don't know that. I don't live there, but I'm impressed with the improvement in the run game. I'm also impressed with their defense.
Just kind of same deal with AJ, just, you know.
Well, AJ gets better every week.
Okay.
I mean, every week he's gotten better. Last week he practiced on Tuesday, he full practiced on Wednesday, and he full practiced on Thursday. This Sunday he felt the best he's felt on any Sunday since he's been hurt. So clearly it's been incremental, but clearly there's improvement each week. I thought in the game last week, he carried the ball 30-some-odd times for 130 yards, and you could see more of those runs just starting to percolate now. Some of those extra effort AJ runs, you know, that he's feeling a little better. Is he still accelerating and cutting the way that he's capable of? Not yet. But I think he's gaining ground on this now. Now, tomorrow we could, God forbid, have a tweak. You know, it's the process with this, right? But right now, I can honestly tell you he's gaining ground on this injury. And I feel like, you know, we're going to see another level up this week of him, you know, barring anything else. I mean, it's just hard to, and so, like, you know, it takes a while to, you know, groove back in. So he had a little bit more practice last week, and then he got more carries. And I think, you know, he was starting, he's, you know, no matter how talented you are, no matter what, you know, you still, you know, when you're a young player, practice and repetitions become really, really important, because in our run game, we have a lot of different run fits. And what you might think is not blocked well may be blocked well, but the run fit wasn't right, okay? And so, like, we need the repetitions to get all of that right. It's timing, it's everything else, it's the ability to make those cuts. So I think we're starting to see him come back around with that, with sheer practice repetition and physically feeling better. And you know, certainly not 100%, but that's unrealistic to expect from what he was dealing with. I mean, it's just, you know, pretty textbook on these deals that it's pretty time intensive, and it's been time intensive. We're talking about Game 4. In Game 4, this happened. You know, I believe I'm right when I said it, right? Game 4. I mean, that was a chunk of our season right there. You know, but it's the way it is.
Kind of simplistic, but how do you keep them just focused on the opponent and not worried about 8 wins and bowls and rivalry week and just?
It's fair. I mean, you know, I think when you're dealing with young guys, you know, there's a lot of components to motivation, right? But this is the last game of the regular season, so I think it is good to focus on rivalry week and focus on 8 wins. And I mean, you know, it's about, I mean, these kids know. I mean, here we are. This is it. This is the last home game. I think the key is not, sometimes in some of these types of games, is not get too emotionally high, too much. And sometimes when you do that, you don't play real good in the first half. You're dealing with a lot of emotion, and you know, sometimes the emotion's a good thing, but sometimes the emotion can, you know, get you out of, you know, the details of your job, and you know, and you make mistakes. So I think as the week goes by, I've got to do a good job of trying to make sure we don't get too far on that edge of the thing. That will probably handle itself, you know. So, but in the beginning of the week, I think you're coming off of a tough deal, and I think, you know, part of the process is we got all this great stuff in front of us. You know, you know, it's meaningful. I mean, just like if you had a team that had 2 wins, I mean, it's hard to get them to look at what's ahead of them meaningful. That's a whole different dynamic. So, you know, I think I would anticipate our guys will play really hard. I think our goal is not worried about how hard we'll play. It's playing really well early, and being really we use the word around our program, being at competitive excellence. At the most competitive moments, you have your most competitive play. You know, don't let your most competitive play be on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in practice. But when the bright lights are shining, you're making the very best decisions and plays that you can make.
Coach, just getting into the last game of the season, I know the whole year everyone's always focused on how to improve week to week, but then when you come into the last week, is it provide a little bit more perspective, at least on the fact of how time goes in the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to imagine here we are. It's like I think I said to them yesterday, it's like the hourglass sand, man. It's just all of a sudden, wow, it's empty. You know, you're down. You're down. And we've spent so much time building this program and painstakingly building it brick by brick, if you will. And so many of these guys have been so instrumental in this that, I mean, everybody's instrumental, but these guys have been here, you know, through the real bulk of this deal. So, I'm really close with these guys, like really close with them. And that's hard, I have such a great appreciation and love for these kids and what they've been able to endure and what they've done. I mean, you're talking about bowl eligibility for the 5th time in 6 years when this thing was as down as any program in Power 5 football was. And yet, that's what's been done here. I mean, and brought us back into national spotlight this year. And we'd like to close this thing off and had to deal once again with some critical curveball injuries. But these guys are pretty resilient. They've managed all of that. So, I just think that, yes, it seems like you look around and it's like, wow, this went by fast. Like, where did these 6 years go? Holy moly. It's, I got to fight all that emotionally too. It's just, I'm trying not to go down that path on Monday and, because I know I'll be down that path on Friday and Saturday, So, we just want the so very best for these kids. They've worked so hard and, you kind of feel like a parent. And sometimes though that, you can't be parent driven, you want to enable but this one, I think we've got to put a plan in place and let them handle it.
How do you monitor AJ in game with his injury? It kind of looked like he was limping there by the 3rd quarter with his 30th carry.
I mean, how do you feel? I feel great. All right. I mean, you got to limp a little bit. And limp doesn't really mean anything. Sometimes it comes out and it just, it's just what it is. If he feels like he's been great, if he feels like, he can't go, or, use the word he can't go. If he feels like he's not going at the level he should be going, he tells us, and we get him out. The last thing we do is keep him in there, and because we feel like, hey, you got to go. That's not what goes on. I think Brian White does a phenomenal job, and I think AJ does a phenomenal job. We know exactly how he's feeling and where he's at. So he was playing. I thought he was playing his best ball towards the end of that game. I mean, that's where we started seeing some of those runs again of his, those extra effort, just hard to bring down, punishing style of runs. And I think he was gaining. And then the fact that he felt his very best yesterday, Sunday, following the game, that he has since he got hurt, tells you that all of that in-game stuff was appropriate, right? Because if something had happened significantly, he would have backtracked a little bit. He would have had a little bit of a setback. And that can happen too. But that wasn't the case. So I think we're fine there. I mean, I think, we've got very capable guys behind him and certainly willing and ready. But I think at the end of the day, we're trying to get him back to his peak performance, and that's a process. And as long as he's healthy and feeling healthier, we're going to continue to bring him back to where he was prior to this injury. And if you don't give him the work, then he's not going to get back that way because of the timing. I'm telling you, that's the issue. Is sometimes you got to get back into that timing issue and the feels of where those cuts are, and I think he knows that, and he wants more. He wants more practice. He wants more because he's feeling a little bit better, and so I think that's critical as we move forward. The last thing we want to do is do less right now. I mean, we had enough of less. You know, we're trying to do a little more as long as he's safe and can handle it, and it appears as though he's really starting to really turn that corner now.
Eric Dungy is one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country. You mentioned it too.
Yeah.
But Tommy DeVito is more of a pocket passer, and knowing that Eric might not start on Saturday, how does that present challenges for preparing for both kind of positions?
I think Tommy runs their offense, and you know, I mean, Eric, you know, I certainly understand why we call him dual threat, because he is a good runner. I think he's an NFL thrower. I mean, that guy's accurate now. What are we talking about? He's got a strong arm, and he's highly accurate. He throws a great deep ball. He sees the field really well. He just happens to have great legs. And by the way, he's a vicious competitor. So I mean, like, you know, I guess that makes him dual threat. But when I watch Tommy, he runs pretty good too, and he throws the ball pretty good. So I think they got what they want. They got. You know, no two guys are exactly the same. I mean, but at the end of the day, they don't appear to me that they're changing their offense for Tommy DeVito. I think they're running the same offense. I think Tommy, when it's time to pull the ball down, and a lot of times with Eric, you know, I mean, he has some QB design runs, but he has a whole lot of third down, pull the ball down, go get a first down runs. That's just quarterbacking, you know, that guy wants to get first downs, you know. It's something that I think we need to do a little bit more of, is have the ability to, when it breaks down on third down and you got those chunks of yards to be had, that breaks the defense back a little bit. And, you know, I think that's something that, you know, I think is very, very important, you know. So I think Tom DeVito will do the same thing, you know. You know, he's not as experienced as Eric, but there's hard to get a lot of guys more experienced than Eric, right?
A couple days ago, guys mentioned how important National Nowadays was for him.
Yeah.
Which, and you can see on the face of it, like, but how important was it to you and to the program in general, and then kind of how did you reframe what the film was?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. You know, winning every week is really important, and having the opportunity to get. We wanted to get 9 in the red. We still can get 9, but have an opportunity. You know, but it's one game at a time. I mean, our goals are all out there right now. I mean, when we dropped to Clemson, we lost our realistic opportunity for the conference championship, right? Now after that, you're just trying to win as many games as you can win down the home stretch, you know, for the obvious reasons. One, to get as many win totals as you can, and two, you know, your placement in postseason. So we're still going down that same path right now. So it's really, at the end of the day, you know, we try to talk about it. I try to say it here in each week. I try to talk about the week ahead, because when you just talk about the week you're playing, the rest of that stuff will work itself. What it's going to be is what it's going to be. You know, I try not to get too far out, because if you do that and then something doesn't go right, then you're, like you said, you're reframing. You know, so I think you might skim a little bit big picture, but you try to focus on near picture. And, you know, we still have so much opportunity ahead of us, you know. I think it's good when you're having that conversation, I guess, because, you know, I mean, you know, to this point, you know, we're able to bring a national spotlight to Boston College football-wise. We're able to get ourselves in the elite of college football, and now we're trying to sustain that level. And that's the challenge that we have in the side of the division we're on. It's the challenge we have in the conference we're in, like everybody. And being able to hold your injury factor with your level of play and don't get too distorted as you go down the home stretch to try to finish, you know. And we still have an opportunity to finish at the very elite of the total conference. Not just our side, which is the best side, right? But I'm talking about the total conference. That's very, very much there. So here we are. We're playing for win number 8. And that's a good thing. That's a real good thing, you know. And I'm excited about it.
I wanted to ask this one the other day, just from a bigger picture standpoint, but that 4th and 1 situation, we
Yeah.
had that multiple times since you've been here. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like, it feels like a coach's nightmare. But I think the biggest one that I can remember was the one at Dublin or whatever. But like, now that you have like kind of like data
Well, every situation is different. That's why you know we have analytics here, and a lot of the teams are using this analytics, and we have that. And the analytics is great, but like anything else, there come to those gray areas where, you know, it's one thing to have a mathematical analytic, and it's another thing to understand, try to have a feel for what's going on and what's the course of the game been. Okay, so we have a chart. You guys have probably seen it. It's, you know, when I do the post-game interviews, it's up on the wall. You know, it's all right. You have a 90% chance. You have a 10% chance of scoring points when you're inside your 10-yard line. That means to go the long field, there's a 10% chance of scoring points. That's what the field position analytics would tell you. Now, you know, every year that can adjust a little bit, but the big picture thought process here is really you don't have a high percentage of a team going 90 yards on you. It's a it's a low percentage. Of course, that doesn't make any difference. If they do it, they do it. But if you're going by the analytics will tell you that, right? Obviously, the more you work up the field, the more percent chance of scoring points becomes. And then, of course, not just scoring points, but scoring touchdowns. And you just follow that chart right up. So when you make these decisions, like I had to make on Saturday, you know, you want to say, okay, how's your defense playing? What kind of defense are you playing against? Okay, and then you factor in the percentages, and you got to do that pretty quickly. Clearly, in that game, I thought our defense was playing pretty well that game. I thought, as I said to you all week long, that defense is a very stout, big, athletic defense. Clear, you know, listen, I would tell you, if I thought even differently, that was clearly the right decision to make. By every measure, that was right, except for one. It didn't work out in the end right, okay? You punt the ball, you pin the team, you play defense, and that's what you do. Unless you can't play defense, and you saw it during the game, like we're getting gored, we can't play defense, or unless you're dominating their defense, you know, and those factor your decisions. Had that ball been 10 yards closer, there's no doubt I would have went for that on fourth down. That's easy, you know, 10 more yards. But when you start getting that thing up towards midfield, that's when you're running the risk. You don't get it, you give them that momentum boost, and you give them a short field like that, a half field basically. That's hard, and that's hard in the end to justify. So I think we believe in our plan to win. You've heard me state this several times here. You probably can tell me. Number one in our plan to win is play what? Great defense. Number one in our plan to win. So, and we've been playing damn good defense. So, and then we weren't playing against a, you know, what you would call a juggernaut offense. Okay? So, that's Clemson. That might be a different decision. But that right there, as I told the players yesterday, man, this is what happens when you're the man in the arena. As a team, as a player, as a coach, you know, you got to make those decisions, and you got to feel great about what you did. You do them for the right reasons, and you roll. Just like I'm not going to sit there and pick apart a player's decision, you know, because it is what it is. I think, you know, so I would make that again and again and again, and that's not being stubborn. That's just being real. And I would say most everybody would. However, when it doesn't work out, and then it always brings upon, yeah, but. So, I go for a lot of fourth downs around here, a lot, and I try to make. And everyone's an independent contractor. You know, I know where our field goal kicker's range is. You know, at least I think I do, right? But I'm not always right there either. So that influences my fourth down decision making. So that goes in, you know, against. Although the analytics will try to factor that in a little bit, the history of kicks. So, you know, that's where we're at with it, man. There's a lot of tough decisions that happen in line, and I think you have your thought process in mind. And it's just like sometimes, I'll give you another one. Like pre-game, you got to make a decision. Do I take the, you know, do we defer or take the ball? Right? That's a decision. You know? And you make those decisions, and you got to go with them. You know, why do you make them? Well, what kind of offense are you playing against? What kind of defense are you playing against? Are you on the road? Are you at home? What's your gut feeling? You know, because you're trying to, what are you trying to gain in the beginning with that decision? Field position. You know, if you feel like you can play great defense, and then all of a sudden they're punting to you, and you get the short field, and then you get the momentum early, right? But you make that decision, all of a sudden they flip the field on you. It ended up being the wrong decision. You know? There's so many of those that happen in every game. It's crazy the amount of that stuff that goes on. That's why, you know, we age so much in such a short period of time. Like, you know, 6 years might as well be 42. I'm like 100 right now.
The last one is obviously like these Syracuse games have been like historically they've been like intense.
Yeah.
Like, there have been moments, you know, here, there have been moments there.
Yeah, no
where
doubt.
it's kind of wild, but especially coming off a situation where you know you guys had a tough one. They're in this spot. It's a high stakes game. How do you make sure that you can manage those emotions so that things like that don't necessarily happen or take over a game?
I know. That's, you know what, Julian, that's the $60 million question. That's what I was saying. Like, I think there's, you know, I pay a lot of attention to motivation, and I think, you know, in games like these, I think you start the week out and really hit it out there with, you know, what are we playing for, the energy, the passion, the juice, the history of the game. Then I think you go about your business and you become more workmanlike. And then towards the end of the week, you make a decision. Do you need more fight for the, you know, maroon and gold, or is it let that, you know, don't bring that too far over that way. This will be enough for these guys, and these are the decisions you make. And how much does all that matter? I don't know. It matters. You know, some teams, that's the greatest thing in the world, is to play at this high emotional peak. You know, with other teams, it's better to find a good level, but not too far that way, because sometimes too many mistakes, you know, you get bound up. So that's what we're working on and striving for, is to find the right mix. But I say it again. I would say this game, this team. I think they know exactly what we're going for here, exactly what this game means, and I think they'll certainly. I think they'll certainly understand that. Now, what is that emotion when they come out of the tunnel and they meet their parents and they hug them and kiss them? And that, as a football player, that is an extremely emotional time. I remember that back when I was in high school, and that was a lot of years ago. And I just remember like being overwhelmed by emotions. You know, you spend your whole life, and your parents have been with you all through your growing up in football and what football's meant to you, and then you get to college and you got your whole college experience, and you're getting ready to get out of this sheltered, if you will, environment and go into, you know, having to become responsible for yourself. I mean, it's just, and maybe for a lot, never playing football again. I tell you, and then I find myself, because I'm emotional to begin with, and so I feel that when they're coming out, and it's just so emotional. And while that can be energizing, it's also draining in its own way, you know? And so it's one of my favorite, yet least favorite. You know what I mean? It's a weird dynamic, you know? It's like I love it, but I hate it. And so I'm saying for these players, it's about management. And some people are like, we are all different here, right? Some are very emotional. Some cry easier than others, right? If you're on the emotional end of things, it can roller coaster ride you a little bit. And some people aren't quite so emotional. I guess they don't ride the roller coaster as much. I ride it like I'm at the amusement park, you know? So that's just the way I'm wired. I don't know. Maybe it's the way I was raised in my Italian house. I'm not really sure, but it's the way it is. So, yeah, Rich.
We'll finish things up with Rich.
Just a comment on Coleman and Robinson, their edge rushers.
Yeah, talented guys.
Yeah.
I mean, numbers speak for themselves, and I think they're excellent. I think they've done a great job with those guys. You know, kind of like our guys. I mean, really developed. You know, yeah. I mean, I think they're. But I would say to you that, you know, I think our guys get a fair amount of notoriety. I don't know that they get as much notoriety, and I think they're very deserving, because I think they're outstanding players. So, you know, that's a real problem. You know, that's why they're up there in sacks, and that's why they're up there in interceptions, just like we were. So, I mean, you know, those guys disrupt the flow of the game, without a doubt. You know, without a doubt. So I think, you know, they're talented, and I think that's a big part of what, you know, there's a number of factors on their defense. They're a heavy pressure defense. And but I think they've done a great job in man coverage, and so I think they've elevated their level of defense. But those two guys are really at the top of that as well.